Okay, we're going to get started. It is 4:30. And for those that are just arriving, if you've not signed in, please make sure and sign in if you would like to speak. You don't have to just sign in if you're here. That's totally fine. Though, if we do call your name to speak and you decline, that's totally fine as well. What we do try to do, because like I said, we're going to try to keep this between a 4:30 to 6 o'clock town hall if possible. We're going to do a 2-minute time limit on speaking. And just to make sure that everyone should do, this is just a very open-ended meeting. It's for us to talk about. Of course, we've been dealing a lot with, and for those that are coming still in, I think, is there any more chairs? Or are we full over here? There's one chair over here too, for anybody that's just came in. But, we've been dealing with a lot here in the last few, not even just few months, year of just a lot of growth here in Barron County, a lot of things happening. And, of course, this isn't a new issue that has come up. It is just an issue that has come to light again. And we just want to hear from you. I've said this over and over. I'm very middle ground on this. I don't know where all the magistrates stand on it, but I thought it would be the best for them to hear directly from you all as to how you feel. And of course, the major topic tonight is planning and zoning. Or zoning in the county, we have planning, but we do not have zoning or land use in the county. So I know that sometimes gets to be a little bit of a confusion, but we do have planning, but we do not have zoning and land use in the county. So with that said, what we'll do, like I said, open-ended. If there are statements made, I will say this. If there are statements made in regards to, well, X amount will happen, and that cannot happen, we will have some kind of, not fact check, but someone will have an opportunity to, on this panel of us, between Kevin, who has more knowledge on zoning, to be able to answer some of those questions directly versus, look, I'm all about, I understand everyone gets passionate, but we want to make sure that everyone understands what actually things are. Okay, that's where we're at. So, okay. So what we will do is we'll start. 2 minutes will be the time. And when I call you up, like I said, it's very open-ended. And if there's something you want to talk about other than zoning, you're more than welcome to do that. It's a town hall. So, Tiffany Thompson.
Get for signing first.
Oh, yes. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm an adjacent landowner to this solar project, so I would hope that bears some weight here. We have some significant concerns. It's not just the adjacent landowners. This is going to affect everyone if they apply for IRBs. We know that many other solar projects in Kentucky are doing exactly that. Yeah, I can't hear you.
No.
Don't if I go up my tire, sweet.
I can just talk louder if I need to.
Just say something.
Can you hear me now?
I mean, I can.
Testing.
Mine works. You can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, mine works good. Do you want to just take that? I don't know. I'm sorry.
It's not even on.
It's not tapping.
Hey,
Okay, there we go. Go ahead.
So,
Okay, 2 minutes.
all right.
Okay.
So I'm an adjacent landowner to this project. It's going to massively affect us. This is something that's going to affect everyone in our county, especially if they apply for the IRBs that we've seen these companies do at other solar projects in Kentucky. There's many examples of this. So everyone in this county is affected because you're paying for it. If it's coming out of our tax dollars, then we are paying for this. So I'm paying for something that I don't want that's going to negatively affect my land. It's going to affect our property values. With that, are you going to be reducing our property taxes? We know that people aren't going to want to live next to this. We don't want to live next to this. This is going to be in our front yard. Are you going to buy my property? Nobody wants to live with that in their front yard. There's many examples of property value reduction that's been ignored in the earlier documents that we've seen. You know, specifically the setbacks that have been changed on this, you're gonna have solar panels 10 feet from property lines. I think that's pretty abhorrent for what they're trying to put in. There's other examples of projects like the Thoroughbred program where they are putting them 300 feet, which is a reduction from the 1,000 feet that they were originally supposed to be doing. I know that we have the ability to pull this back to our county level and review this further, and that's what we're asking to have done.
You know, and to answer, I will have a rebuttal on that part, just from my part. I actually met with the PSC last week in Frank, when I was in Lexington, the director, and basically that project itself, the zoning wouldn't have, the zoning we would put in right now wouldn't affect that project. So the topic tonight basically would not, that project is already in motion. And I had them pull every project that could not be affected. And in this county, because there's others, you know, and that's being talked about. And the only project that was on that list that I could not have any involvement to basically stop with zoning or anything of an ordinance or anything, was that project.
Why?
Because we don't have the zoning to even do it, but when it was even put into motion.
So if it's not zoned, how can it go forward?
Hold on, we can't, I mean, that's what I'm saying, like, we can get you up here in a sec. But there's no zoning for this.
But
And
it's
there's
only
no
the only way to stop it.
Without zoning, you cannot stop what someone does on their property.
Can't regulate the use. You can't regulate the use locally unless you have a land use regulation. It's no different than a gun range. It's no different than a junkyard. No different than a chicken house. No different than any of that without land use.
Those don't affect neighboring properties to the same extent as this.
Understood. Okay, that's fine. Without zoning though, the planning commission itself not dictate what happens on a property. The only thing we are bound by are subdivision regulations. So in Barron County, where we have a city of the third class or higher, so the state statute says that any parcel of ground that's divided into two parcels is considered a subdivision. The planning commission regulates that, has regulated it since 1978. The planning commission was formed in 1972. So outside of that, we don't have the ability to regulate what transpires on a piece of property itself. You want to have a record shop at your place there on the farm, or just on a little 3-acre lot, you're more than welcome to have that. You want to have a gun range on your property, as long as you're following the federal guidelines, which is no different than a junkyard or a solar farm in this instance. You follow the federal guidelines. We consider, by law, we have to consider those things structures because they have wind loads and they have speed loads or snow loads, sorry. So in our statute, in our local ordinance, we have to regulate those the same as any other structure. So any other structure in Barron County has setbacks of 35 feet from the right of way, which is your front, 10 feet on your sides, and 20 feet on your rear property lines. We have to consider them structures. We cannot consider the use of what that property is or what it's doing at that current moment. So there's other instances in other parts of the county where it does affect landowners. Not necessarily agriculture related, but maybe it's industrial related. There's a couple of factories that are in the county.
But you've allowed them to reduce those setbacks to 10 feet.
We had to set it at a structure because we can't regulate that use. So when the state says it's got to be 1,000 feet and it comes to us, we're not regulating the use of it. So we set it at 10 feet, the same as any other structure in our county. So any structure that you build right now is 10 feet from a property on the sides, 20 feet from the rear. So we can't dictate and say, oh, this is a solar panel, but we know it's a solar panel. If it was a factory that was making contaminated stuff, It's 10 feet from the property lines. We don't get to dictate that property line specifically. So in the PSC office, when they hold their public hearing that they will hold, and you all know that, you can request those be pushed back. PSC office has the ability to regulate that again. That's at that level though. But on the local level, we can't dictate that this use because it's a solar farm, for instance, or this use because it's a gun range, or this use because it's just a single family house in a row of multiple houses down through that. Every one of those have to be equal because we can't regulate what actually transpires on that property. We're just not allowed to by state statute.
But just my review in regards to what we're talking about tonight is even if zoning was put into place tonight or to next month or whatever, if it ever was, this project would not be affected.
And there's nothing you can do to bring this back to a county level to the
It
document.
is at the PSC.
There's no commercial zoning in Barron County.
Nope, not in the county. If it's taxed as commercial, it's a totally different tax. The PVA tax is based upon the use of the land, not the zoning.
So this document, the KRS 136-120 states all commercial solar farms become titled as electric power companies. That has no effect.
I mean, I met with PSC last week, met with the director, and she was very nice, and I expressed concern. And she said it's at the PSC level now, and that they basically have a checklist of everything that that company has to do in regards to studies. I think they have to prove all these different things. And like even Muhlenberg County was there with me because they're going through the same thing. And they had their PSC hearing that night that I was meeting with him that day. And, you know, he wasn't, you know, on the panel, because you're not, if you have a planning commission, the planning commission's on the panel. And he said, like, she even told him, like, you really don't know, you don't have a vote. Nobody really has a vote as long as they're following, just like any utility company or anything like that would be following the requirements set in place by the PSC. Now, I'll call you up when you're done. Okay. Okay. So next, I'm just trying to get to that tonight. Really, I mean, I feel for you. Tonight's not real. I can't. You know, it's a tough subject. I know. Okay, Adam Thompson. Okay.
Everybody's ears out. I own a farm right across the street from where an industrial project is planned on taking place. And I would like to make an argument for zoning regulations. One of the reasons why I have a bit more insight into this is because I work at Blue Oval SK in Glendale. I'm sure most of you have heard about it. It is a 1,500 acre factory that has drastically changed the traffic.
The whole town. Yes.
The whole town. And if this, and I work there, so I do have some insight into this. And if the factory ever does make any money, instead of constantly consuming government funding in order to try and start up and be successful, I'm not sure what kind of benefit the community around the factory is actually getting, other than the opportunity to work for, say, $23 an hour. The revenue so far and the benefits so far seem to be almost entirely toward government funded facilities, such as a new, offices and buildings of that nature. And very little has actually gone into helping members of the community that were actually affected or displaced by the operations going on there. Zoning, if plans like that get approved, whether it's zoned for commercial or not doesn't really matter, because any area can be evaluated as commercial. Am I wrong? No. You can turn any zone into a commercial zone.
There's a few, you can, there's a few things that you have to follow with state guidelines to get it rezoned to a different kind of classification, but in theory, yes, you could rezone into a commercial classification.
And that's why it's very important for people like you who sit on this board to very carefully consider what these corporations are planning to do in these frankly small and vulnerable communities that don't have a lot of buying power or ability to resist these places coming in. I'm sure if this factory ever gets up and going very well, it will generate revenue. What they do with that money is completely up to the government, not the people that have had to deal with the outcome. So when it comes to zoning regulations, I would definitely like to see more input from the people that are going to be affected. Without mentioning anything further about the solar project, I would just like to say that I am for it if it's done properly. I also believe that agricultural operations need to be less regulated than, say, corporate or industrial.
You care about speaking to that?
Okay, yeah, so your time is up, but he can.
You care about speaking to that part? Sure. So everyone knows, and it's been made mention, I'm sure it's been wrote about before. There's a law, federal law out there, right to farm law. State of Kentucky passed it in 1980. They revised it in 1996 to include pesticides and insecticides, which is why when you spray your farm or you spray your crops and you're adjacent to a residential community, they can't sue you based on the fact that that's been sprayed out and it's went out into the air. It protects the farmer and their individual or their property. Having said that, zoning does not dictate the agricultural portion of that classification. It won't dictate what barns are built. It won't dictate how many acres that can be plowed or tillable. It will not dictate those uses. So the most protected entity in zoning across the United States is your agriculturally based individuals. If you divide that property up, say you want to cut that up into residential type developments, then you got to apply for a zone change because you're no longer considered a farm. But going forward, if we do, if it is what you all as citizens want going forward, there would have to be multiple public meetings. And just because you have counties that's adjacent to you or to us that has zoning does not mean that's how we write ours. Glasgow zoning ordinance is not the same as Cave City zoning ordinance. They are wrote drastically different and they are curtailed to what those citizens want. So if that is a piece of legislation or regulation that you would want wrote, it can be very specifically wrote to your community, but it's a blanket ordinance across the entire county. Doesn't change because you're in the north or in the south or east or west. It's the same across the board. Having said that, Planning Commission in a rezoning process has the ability to put binding elements on things. So if something is to be rezoned and maybe the community's adamantly against it, but they don't have any findings of fact on why it is, the Planning Commission can put stipulations on there that says that structure has to be 50 feet or 100 foot off or 500 feet off. Or you have to put some kind of screening threshold in that's required. They have that ability to place those parameters in that zoning process. Right. So hopefully that answered a little bit.
Next up, Sheila Mitchell.
I'm speaking out against the solar. We own a farm here. There's another woman who owns a farm. And on all four sides of her, she can't be here today because she's got flu. All four sides of her, she goes to her realtor and says, sell it. I'm not going to be surrounded on four sides of my property. The realtor tells her, good luck, nobody will buy it. And you have to disclose it, you can't put it on the market. It's going to drastically impact the value of our property. Property taxes will have to come down to what, but nobody was going to want to buy this poor woman's property, four sides. It's not like you have taken, like in Nevada, 3,000 acres. It's 5 acres here, 20 acres there, 100 acres here. And it's impacting a lot of people and it's just being ignored. It's like they tried to slide it through.
So as a property owner next to, just curious, did you receive any letters
Nothing.
or you didn't
Nothing.
receive?
We have been
certified-
knocking on doors. Nobody has heard of this. And what I keep hearing is, yes, but our electricity will go down. No, it won't. This company is going to sell this electricity to the highest bidder. And believe me, Barron County is not going to be the highest bidder. So it's not helping the county at all. And the landowners that are right up against this, it's going to impact our property values. Who's going to compensate us for that? Is Barron County going to compensate us for that? Is this company going to compensate this woman who is surrounded on 4 sides?
Again, it goes back to individual property owners' decision. It's their property. I mean, it's just like, that, I think that's where we're at. Yeah.
Something this large should have came into the public eye and had public hearings.
There was
This backdoor deals,
no, there were public hearings.
We weren't informed, and I'm.
I mean, I saw some of the property owners there
the
myself.
people up against.
That's
this
where I guess
property
the
never got
confusion is.
informed.
Okay. We're at the 2-minute mark though. Yeah. Okay, next up is David. I think this is you. David Dickerson, sorry. It's a little, hey, I feel for you though. You sign your name and it gets sloppier every time.
Because I'm left-handed.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
Yes.
Members of the court, this revolve goes down to 4 words. The first one's regulation. That's all you're hearing about, is regulation for zoning. Regulate, regulate, regulate. That's it. Period. It's not anything else. People are gonna divide the land up the way they want to do it, the owners. And then Mr. Mike, who's had probably 15 minutes to talk already, with all due respect, is going to help divide this up. So it's regulation. And that's what we hear. We're already over-regulated in this country. We're over-regulated in this state. We're over-regulated in this country. The second word I want you to know is prevention. You folks have been told that nothing can prevent this. And I understand the SKO will plant. I agree with you. I don't think they'll ever produce 1 battery. But prevention is what you're being sold. Rahm Emanuel said a few years ago that never let a crisis pass. Well, they're not letting this crisis pass. They're using this crisis to try to foist zoning on this community. We didn't need it 30 years ago, as I said at the cattlemen's meeting the other night, and we don't need it today. It's just that simple. Prevention is what you're being sold. But then there's another word that comes along right after prevention, and that's variance. Y'all grant variances if they're requested. They can come in and they can ask for a variance to put something on your piece of property that you don't want, and it can grant it. Now you get a hearing and you get to talk about it. You get to do all these things we're doing tonight. I don't know how many variances are refused. I'm sure there's a statistic for it. I just don't trust the process once you get zoning in here, because there's any justification that could be made for a variance on a piece of property. And we don't need this. Finally, the last word is control. You don't control your property totally like you do today with the zoning. It's just that simple. You don't do it. It's not your control. While I have respect for the people at City County Planning Commission, and I have respect for Mr. Mott, I'm almost done. If that was the 2 minutes, it can't be.
It was, but it's okay. Last words, I'll give you last words. Go ahead.
Control. Finally, this is the last word, I promise. Why don't we establish a county tax on solar panels?
It will be back. I mean, when that land becomes commercial,
I'm
it's
talking
commercial
about the
tax.
panels themselves for mitigation of the disaster environmentally that they potentially cause. You put $1 a square inch, $1 a square foot. It doesn't matter to me. I've got a solar panel that runs a battery out at my farm. I'll pay you $1 a square inch. I think there's 12 by 12, so that's 144 square inches. I'll pay you $144 a year for you to mitigate my loss. So let's look at that. I'm sorry I went over time.
You're okay.
Please forgive me. Somebody's
No
losing my check.
Next, Tony Bishop. Tony? But in Rebutal, though, they are commercially taxed once it becomes commercial.
what we're saying.
Everybody, I know most of the people on this panel. I love you guys. I've known some of you for decades. I was at the Glasgow Lake Times for almost 30 years. So I know a lot about the county. This project, as we were talking about the solar project, is in my backyard. Basically, we had beautiful wooded area, 200 acres right behind us, and all but about an acre and a half of that is gone. So it's already been cut down. So that's just a thing, you know, that's a personal thing right there. But this is bigger than just Barron County, because these, as some folks have mentioned, these are snaking in and around residential areas in the county. It's not a big area that's a mile or two away from everybody, out in the middle of everything. It's not going to affect anybody. It's right behind your house, or right in front of your house, or all the way around your house. So this is a lot bigger than Barron County, because this is happening a lot all over the whole country. We're seeing thousands of acres of fertile. This is some of the best farmland in the country right here. This is going to ruin 2,300 acres of farmland. So this is a big thing. It's not just about statistics. It's about actual facts about what's going to happen. There can be more things happen, but less things happen. But this is not really green energy. These panels have cobalt and thus lithium can be leached into the ground. It's going to ruin this farmland for decades. So even if they pull all these things, these thousands of solar panels up years from now, they say, oh, we'll clean all that up after 40 years. Do you really think they're going to clean all that up after 40 years and then make it just as good as it is now, where you can go out and raise corn or soybeans or whatever for human consumption? So it's a big thing we have to think about. And just the fact that there's control over that. There are a lot of foreign entities that are coming in and buying land and then doing this to the land. And one more thing I'll say about these solar panels. If y'all don't realize, solar panels are fancier now than they used to be. They look better, they're thicker, they're heavier, they produce a lot of heat in the air. But the solar method of producing energy has not increased, but by a percentage or two over the last 45 to 50 years. So you're looking at probably about 9% efficiency. So very inefficient. Thank you, guys.
Okay, going back to David Buckingham.
I just came to this meeting to basically find out what was going on.
Well, welcome.
I may be the only person in the room that doesn't know anything about zoning. And where can those of us that are as dumb as I am find out something about it? Is it by KRS? Is it federal?
Yeah, KRS statute 100, that's the planning and zoning statute. It dictates and details every step that the planning commission can and cannot do. Okay. Now, if you're talking about specific zoning classifications, that KRS statute won't address that. It just says planning commission needs to write a zoning ordinance however the citizens want that road. And a commercial zoning classification in Glasgow is different than the one in Park City, how it's wrote. But the KRS 100 statute is specifically planning and zoning.
Okay. Who determines whether this county goes under zoning? Is it the fiscal board?
So the planning commission would hold, the planning commission would hold the public meetings and the public hearing, the official public hearing, and then that would be forwarded to the fiscal court, to the magistrates and judge for final approval for adoption.
Okay, if the fiscal court does make the determination the county going under zoning, and I don't know enough about it to speak for it or against it, that's not the purpose here. But if you make the determination to do that, is that determination subject to referendum, county vote?
No, my understanding is that once they pass the ordinance becomes law and after second reading. And maybe Mike might be able to speak to that, but it becomes law. And then everything that's in place is grandfathered in. So it can't go retroactive back on something. So the very next day is the new process under zoning classifications.
Okay, if the fiscal court does determine it would go under zoning, it's not subject to voter recall, I guess, for lack of a better term. How do you get rid of it if the fiscal court determines they're sick of it?
Well, I mean, they could repeal it just the same as they could repeal any other ordinance.
But it's basically up to the fiscal court once they determine.
It's up to your elected officials. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Daniel Decker, you want to speak or you just?
No, I actually just always put the sign in.
That's it. That's, I didn't mean to call you out here. Okay, Stan and Mira Palmer,
We'll pass.
just signing in, okay? Dan, is it Rutherford? David, sorry,
I just signed in.
just signing in, thank you. I know, this is, just getting a meter, okay. Toby Moss just signed in, this one I think is just a sign, it's King Ab, no, I can't read that. Gary Terry Ashley. Okay, no. Okay, Bill Smith. Decline, okay, that's fine. Lewis Bowers just here. I know you said he must be Maria Westcott.
I just signed in.
Sign in, I appreciate it. Thank you. Martin Peterson. Okay, thank you.
Still want for me to add a whole lot to what David Dickerson said, but I'm gonna do that. I certainly would oppose the idea of enacting this sort of regulation by local government. The whole idea behind zoning is somehow to promote or protect health, morals, safety, and general welfare. And what it does is it places in the control of the central planning authority how you use your own property. So you end up being controlled by some comprehensive plan rather than the individual liberty that is part of our right of private property. Now, many examples, specific examples of some sort of misuse or undue harm to neighbors has been pointed out. But I first of all want to say zoning came into being mostly in urban or city areas. There's been the statement made that this ordinance would be affecting all the citizens of Barron County. That's not true. If you live in Glasgow, you're still going to have your zoning in Glasgow, and this ordinance is not going to be affecting you. It affects those of us who live outside of the three cities. And there's more of us actually than live in those three cities. But I would say that you would have to start considering the cost of enacting the ordinance. And it's going to be a lot of careful study done on what it says. You're then going to have costs of administration. And finally, you're going to have costs of enforcement. All of those things are just a bunch of red tape as far as individual landowners are concerned. These ordinances would normally deal with, some sort of community or neighborhood. That's less likely to be occurring out in the county. We live in an area of the county, and South Barron County may be quite different from North, but exactly identifying any particular group of people who want for particular use. I just want to say that it's designed to properly balance conflicting interests in the case of individual landowners. There's a myriad of things that go into determining that. These ordinances always refer to exceptions, variances, and adjustment. To me, that simply means that there is a possibility of favoritism or corruption being involved from time to time. The people in power can often control how your land is zoned.
Thank you. Next, would be, Ms. Beth Wagner. Did you sign in, Beth? Do you want to say anything? Okay. It's okay.
I really came just to learn because I missed in the previous meetings. But I did have a question. One, can you guys explain what your plans are for your projected zoning? Plans so that we're more familiar with it, because I'm like the fellow before, I'm not real familiar with all of that. The second was that we are, if I'm not mistaken, we're the number one, beef cattle and dairy county in Kentucky. Is there, I believe we need to educate our people more on where, I mean, just as a nation, but even in our communities, where our food comes from, because these solar panels are gonna affect, there's no question that that's gonna affect our grounds and the growing of where it is. And once we become unable to grow food, we're in a country of hurt. So if we could do better education and figure out a way that the farmers that are working their lands and their soils for the crops and the cattle and our food, that they can become financially better for that so that they don't feel like their hands are tied. As they get old, I completely understand. When you're unable to get out with the cows, you still need income. And these solar panels are an option for those people to still get income and not be able to not feel like they're running through everything that they've worked their whole life to do. So if we could come up with some sort of an option to encourage and reward the farmers that are raising our food and our cattle, and work with that. And is there such a thing, and I've not done enough research to speak intelligently on it, but there's an international property maintenance code. Is there enough of that we can adopt parts of that to take care of some of these problems without having to rezone and feel like everybody's hands are tied on what they can do on their own farm? Again, I don't know enough about it. I haven't had enough time to research it. But I know there's things in that as far as like dump sites and abandoned homes or whatever, but I don't know if that would apply.
And those really truly only come into effect like when there's a situation that's causing like health concerns to the neighbor directly.
Okay.
And I can usually call like the health department to get involved, or Marcus is very involved with that, or solid waste. And typically that's whenever a direct neighbor is calling in regards to that.
Right on that. Okay.
Yeah.
So on that note, I mean, that's just, I'm neither here intelligently speaking for or against. I just want more answers to what is the intent and the plans.
And that's a good question. Yeah. And what he was saying a second ago is there's really not because of what Kevin said too, there's no draft of zoning that's been drafted for Barron County. You would have to actually draft a full zoning plan for Barron County. That hasn't been started. I mean, we're just listening as to why do you think we need zoning and why don't you want zoning? I mean, that's truly what you got to think about. And it's not just the solar farm. It's dollar stores. It's gas stations. There's a lot of development going on in the county. And like we've talked about, the only way you really truly control it, what goes around you, is to own it. I mean, that's truly it.
And I'm like this lady. I mean, I would not want to have this in my backyard. I'm thankful that I don't have it in my backyard, and I don't want it in my backyard. No, I don't. No, I'm not certain. I know it's been talked about, but I'm on the 5th generation. I'm raising now my grandchildren, so it's going to be the 5th generation of our family farm. So as Dad, taught me, you don't want the government control over, I can't raise a pig or a chicken or a cow, but there are, I see that there could be some benefits to some things.
Let me speak to one thing.
Sure.
The very first question that you asked.
Sure.
KRS 100,
Mhm.
once again, requires that we do a comprehensive plan, as the gentleman spoke before. We are required, bound by law. Don't get to not do it. Every 5 years, we have to update it. We are getting ready to present our comprehensive plan at our April Planning Commission meeting. That comprehensive plan requires that we have a future land use map for every entity, Glasgow, Cave City, Park City, and Barron County. Don't misconstrue that we have zoning. It just says the state law says we have to have a future land use map. We just typically put a generalized future land use map for the county. Majority of it is agricultural land with the commercial and industrial spots that we know are commercial and industrial already. but we're bound and required to do that. So comprehensive plan has a lot of information in it. You're more than welcome to go to our website, the Planning Commission's website. Pull that up. It's in the land use, chapter 9, land use requirements that we are bound by law to do. But those maps are available for anybody to look at.
And I appreciate you all having this.
Yeah, but going back to, there's no plan. I mean, there's not like we've all got it ready to roll out or anything like that. It's just, we wanted to hear really truly, because I mean, people had reached out to want to, but it's just, this is where we're at. We're just listening and trying to figure out what's the next step. So,
I appreciate that.
yes, Mr. Wanigan.
And I'm like Beth, I've come here to learn and I heard some of the comments and I have a question. If we had zoning, they could still bring solar panels or batteries in.
Yeah, I mean, when you, just because you have zoning doesn't mean it stops.
Yeah, so it
anything.
still
I mean,
can be stopped if
It
they
would
have
just,
zoning.
it would just have to go through an approval, more of an approval process. And more stipulations can be put in.
There are avenues for it to be denied. The planning commission has denied many zone changes within the city limits of where zoning is applied, because the first requirement from the planning commission is, as it's been said, is public safety, health, and welfare. Then it has to meet the future land use map. And if it's not in compliance with the future land use map that's adopted by the comprehensive plan, then the argument is on you as the applicant to prove why your rezoning classification is more appropriate than what we anticipate. If you have findings of fact, as opposed to say, I want it this way, or I'd like to have it this way, you actually have to have evidence, the same as you would, it's a trial type hearing, okay? So the planning commission has denied several zone changes, based on the fact that it changed the neighborhood characteristics, that it would provide, a public health issue. And they can deny it based on that. Now, if they approve it, they have the ability to put those binding elements on it and make it a bit more stringent for that individual to think as well. So they do have the ability, and they have denied several zone changes in Glasgow, Cave City, and Park City.
And one thing I see, we're looking to have magistrates and judge and you as farmers, as farm and agriculture people. But if y'all are all gone and we get somebody don't know, only thing they know is to operate a fishing pole and come up and start telling us everything we got to do with our own land, and that's a whole different story. And my son in Bowling Green has run into that. Him and his neighbors has their little farms, they're up subdivision, come in the middle, and they went to the zoning planning trying to get it stopped. And they said there's no stopping, where the money and the builders, they come first. So it didn't do them any good. So,
Well, once again, I want to reiterate, that's Warren County.
right.
You know, we might not have that same.
Right. That's why I say we're looking to have y'all instead of who they've got down there.
Also more than that.
Get one more question. You said other night, the cattle meeting, say, I like Beth, my farm, I'm the 5th generation, lived on my farm. Hopefully one of my sons or grandsons will take it over. But if I give them a lot on the farm while I'm still living, or sell them a lot, then that's if it's zoned, that comes out of the farm and goes into.
Yeah, less than 5 acres, right? If you're turning it from, like, right, if you give them less than 5 acres, it would have to be zoned from agricultural to residential.
Okay, and then if they took over the farm, can that be rezoned and put back in the farm?
If it stays the same use, it stays.
Yeah,
You
so
don't
that
have to
5
rezone.
acres was added back out, or 3 acres was added back to the farm. It would just be, you could rezone that back to an agricultural classification for the entirety.
Okay.
Yes.
But I'm like David and him, my vote is no right now, but I know y'all want to know that. I want less regulations. I want to burn the brush pile when I go to the fire department, say, can I burn it? And not have to buy a permit or have to do what somebody tells me they don't know.
Not when we're in a burn ban now.
Always call the fire department.
I don't mean to put too much regulations, don't burn.
Thank y'all for doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Eddie Burke, sorry. Okay, I got you. Okay, Joy, is it Joy Wells? Wells, yeah. Just here, okay, gotcha. Kyle, you just signing in, you want to speak? Shirley is in here, so okay, he's gone. Okay, Mr. Morse? Josh.
How are y'all? Having fun?
Good. Always.
Yes, thank you guys for letting us come up and talk. First thing I had to say is I was at the cattlemen's meeting, Mr. Myatt, spoke on the farm, and there were some questions asked about, can we really stop these solar farms? And the answer that I took from what he said was, we might be able to tweak it a little bit, but we're not going to be able to stop it. That's how I took it. I could have taken it wrong.
Currently, yes.
Currently, but even if we had zoning, let's say my neighbor Greg here. Neighbor on the back of us decided to put in a solar farm, we have zoning. We still have to show cause other than, we don't want to look at this.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have enough money to pay a lawyer, a scientist, a doctor, all that. So what I see it affecting me personally is we run a small cow calf operation. I have to work off the farm to pay for that horrible habit. You know, it restricts the development. I'd like my son to come back to the farm one day. I'm gonna have to rezone. We sell freezer beefs, we sell replacement heifers off the farm, causes us to have to rezone. And while we are protected by the Right to Farm Act, those acts can have amendments put on them. And, you know, if we start this ball, if we open this Pandora's box, I think we could be in a world of hurt.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
Just real quickly. When you say that you would have to rezone, I'm just asking, why would you have to rezone?
So if we, from my understanding,
Okay,
if we come back, my son wants to build a house on the farm, it's gonna be that portion
okay,
is rezoned residential. I think you said something to the tune of $500.
that's typical what the.
Right,
the
which
fee is for a rezoning.
Which is fine, but when you're, if I was only beef farming, $500 would kick me in the teeth.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
that's,
The reason why that's set at a certain rate is just because you are potentially changing the neighborhood characteristics, and we want you to genuinely think about it before you apply for a rezoning.
right,
That what you're doing potentially could change the entire neighborhood.
right,
That's why the fee
Yeah.
is set so high at that point.
yes.
But
And then we would have to get a commercial zoning because we're selling animals off the farm,
you would have an ag,
Business.
you would have an ag business.
an ag business. And then,
Because you are considered a business at that point, then people are coming onto your property to buy something no different than a Walmart or a gas station. They're buying a product from you.
right,
So you would rezone it from an ag to an ag business, but that agricultural purpose would still remain.
right. So like Mr. Weiger here,
Sure.
he sells cattle, he just takes them to the stock and how's the
Because that sales isn't transpiring on
the property? Gotcha.
Yes.
And then lastly, and I'll hush up, I thank the world of Greg over here. I don't want to tell Greg what he can do on his farm.
Sure.
And I don't want to tell him how he can help his family or feed his kids. And if that's by subdividing it or whatever it takes, that's on Greg. If I want to control that, I need to go over and say, hey, Greg, if you're gonna do this, let me try to buy it from you. And so now I'm not for, I think I told you guys that. Email to him, I've emailed to three people, I'm not for this. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Okay, Greg. I'm gonna slaughter this last night. Okay, Greg. Oh, the neighbors.
Brisky.
Okay,
Easy to say, but it's hard.
Brisky, got it, okay.
Yeah, Josh is the one that drug me up here.
Neighbor, good neighbors.
Yeah, good neighbors. But basically, I just, my concern is just like some of the other concerns. I'm just afraid of regulation. I'm afraid of control. I'm afraid of, being told more about what I can and cannot do on my land. And that's one of the freedoms I enjoy and like about Barron County is that we don't have zoning. It comes to bite us
in the butt sometimes, but, you know, as a builder and a developer, it's a lot easier, you know, without those control points, and it's just one of the freedoms we have left as Americans, and one of the freedoms we have left being in a small, you know, rural community. So, you know, basically, I'm fearful of it, and I think it's safe for me to say that I'd be opposed to it. At the same time, I understand the concern, especially about the solar farms, and I don't know if there can be any specific regulation related to the solar farms or some kind of controls or zoning just for the solar farms, since there seem to be the primary issue here that's, you know, going to try to maybe drag us all into zoning. So I don't know if that's possible. You know, I'm not sure what the laws and guidelines and regulations are, but it kind of seems like that needs to be brought under some kind of control without dragging the rest of the county in.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to speak on that so people understand, you know, it's not that, you know, these county officials don't want to do anything. The problem with it is mainly the statute. So and what Shen mentioned earlier about the KRS, you know, 100, that deals with land use. There's also provisions that are covered under the Public Service Commission statutes that deal with specifically with solar facilities. And basically what the state has done is they've made a statute, and the way it works is they set up some type of regulatory scheme where, when I say scheme, it's not a bad thing, it means a structure. In administrative law, the legislature decides what's legal, what's not. If something's legal and they want an administrative agency like the Public Service Commission, for example, to regulate, they give the Public Service Commission the powers of oversight to kind of go over the nitpicky details that the legislature is not going to be able to do, just like any other administrative regulation. And the state, and basically, when you have a structure set in place of, hey, if you want to build a solar facility, you got to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it's a lot to it. I mean, it's not like a fly-by-night operation, and it's a long process. And again, don't take this as me speaking for it. This is just facts. It's a long process that they have to go through. And what they did was they passed a statute in 23. They threw a bone to counties basically and said, well, you know, by the way, they also have to certify that they're abiding by certain setback requirements if it's plotted out by planning and zoning. There's not a whole lot there. You can't ban solar farms the way the statute's structured, because if you did, it would be considered arbitrary and capricious by a court, and that's the standard they go by. It's not whether it's right or wrong, it's whether it's arbitrary and capricious. They literally spell out the reasons, the factors they have to consider, and they're not allowed to consider any other factors. And they're, like the judge had said earlier, there's hearings that this particular solar farm is going up. They're at the very beginning of the process. I mean, they haven't even filed the actual, notice to apply for the construction, just a notice that they're going to apply. And there's a time frame they have to abide by. They have to have hearings. And other parties can intervene. So there's a lot to it, but the county has little to no real say, you know, other than some zoning issues to regulate. And that's obviously that's an issue. That's not going to make anybody feel any better. But I think, you know, part of the understanding is that it's not that these officials don't want to do something, it's that the state doesn't really give them a lot of authority to do anything.
Now, you say we can't ban it, but Edmonson County has.
No, they didn't. They just have banned any project going forward, and that has not banned, but they put in a different, like it's an ordinance that we can look at doing, and, you know, potentially we will, that any project that is basically in a process, just like this one, that's literally, I met with the PSC last week. And I asked them, what projects would a solar ordinance, like what would it knock out? And they said, you couldn't touch that project.
And let me,
just tell me that. I mean, that's coming from the director of the PSC.
the other thing about that too, in the law, whether you're a multi-million-dollar corporation or a private individual, the law does not allow you to change the rules halfway through the game. And that's whether it's a multi-million-dollar corporation or an individual. That's the way that the law has always been. And that's what Judge means by you can't, what PSC says you can't touch it. Like Kevin had said, there's some things that can be addressed, but as far as banning it, that can't happen under state law.
I mean, there are counties, like you're saying, just like Evanston County, and right now, is it Caldwell County's in a massive lawsuit right now because they tried to do that with the current project. And so, and I know this is it seems like a really large farm, 2,500 acres, but 1,300 of that being solar on it. But in Caldwell, they've got up to 10,000 acres of solar in motion. So, I know that doesn't sound, but we're not the only ones going through it. Muhlenberg County's going through it. Breckenridge County's going through it. And none of these counties that we're talking about has zoning.
Yeah, they're taking over everywhere.
Mm-hmm. That's what nobody has zoning. So that's but I've not just taken the concerns and just said, okay, like I've talked, I have called, I've met, I've done my due diligence in regards to listening and following through with everything that you all have asked me to do. I sat down, you could ask Mr. Coomer, he sat down with me there and spoke with her. So that I had somebody else just to listen in. So it wasn't just me. And we learned a lot that day, didn't we? Yeah. And Pettigo, you were there too. And we even spoke up amongst all the judges and kind of talked about the situation. And so we're ready now. Michelle Snyder.
So other than this gentleman here, who I've never seen or met, can everybody who's in favor of zoning raise their hands? Is anyone in here other than him in favor of zoning? Because every person that I've talked to, every single one, and I've talked to a lot of people, not a single person has thought that zoning was a good idea. And coming from out west, where everything is zoned, like you cannot do anything on your property. And it starts at the local, oh, you need a permit to cut the tree. Yeah.
$8 to cut a tree.
Yeah. Like it starts but see, this is like a cutting off your nose to spite your face thing that we're even talking about the zoning, I think. Because what happens is the state takes over with their zoning, and on the county level, you have to abide, if you have zoning, by what the state implements. So it's a very dangerous game to get into if it's done anything like it's done out west. You lose all of your private property rights. And nobody, I don't think here, thinks that they don't want property rights anymore. This solar thing has brought up some really good points about property ownership. But I'm saying zoning is not what we want. The solar thing is a separate issue. It might be to the point where we just need to pray. I mean, literally our name, Barron, protected this area, I feel, because our county is anything but barren. So maybe it's at the point where that's what we need to do. I mean, we can argue zoning and ordinances and variances, and my husband is engineering. He's been going over and over it with you. So I would like to say that I'd like to see more creativity in our county, so people don't feel like they need to sell out to a solar company. Like maybe if they would part with like 11 acres, so they're over the ag limit, you could get younger families in. Like, I think we should maybe invest in some more creative options of like bringing in tourism and different things to grow this area.
And that's been a problem. It's too, and that's been a big focus is tourism. Everything we do right now and that we're moving with is tourism based. Right. County wise, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, so we let Warren County.
Yeah, but it also does go back to, we're trying to work on programs for farmers. We're working on a program that would help even vegetable farmers, etc. But it does go back to, it's still like, it's that individual type, you can help, but at the end of the day, like, some people cannot, I'm trying to get out what I'm trying to say. Some people.
Works the water, but.
Right, yeah, we're working and we're trying, but everything we are working on right now is tourism based as a county, I can tell you that.
Yeah, so
yeah.
imposing zoning on farmers who are already working so hard.
Well, I think it just goes back to, it's not just the solar, it's the other things. I mean, I had a phone call about a Dollar General being built in the front yard of someone's property. And, they're probably not thrilled about that either, but at the end of the day, with no zoning, that, again, it goes back to that situation.
Well, but even if we had zoning implemented, it still wouldn't necessarily.
Right, exactly right.
So,
but that's the reason why these conversations are being had right now, is that, do we continue down this path of just, your property, your decision, or do we need more? And that's the reason why we're doing this today, is just to listen, and like I said, there's nothing in place right now. We're just listening, so. Thank you. Eric?
I just came to, I just thought it was a sign in, but I'll say.
Moral support. Michelle, you got this, Michelle.
I'll just reiterate what Michelle said. My experience with zoning, it's definitely a slippery slope, and I was on the citizen planning committee, and basically we were just there to rubber stamp what our city zoning board was accepting from the state. And it turned out to be like the deep pockets of NGOs decided what they wanted to see, and so they controlled out of grants and carrots for everybody. So it sounds like my gathering from this is that zoning wouldn't really protect anybody anyway. Deep pockets could come in and get a variance, but for the average homeowner that can't afford the lawyers and whatnot, that's not going to really do a lot except their land use. And to talk about the solar a little bit, I'm not sure if I don't have a dog in the race at this point right now, but just in my looking into this, I was curious about the revenue bonds and if that's one mechanism for maybe a lever on this. It sounds like
I told the PSC that we are not involved at all. Like I said, if anything has to be involved, we're going. Yeah, but we don't have to. I mean, that doesn't mean, what I'm saying, like I asked, does the county have to be a part of that bonding process? Or there's not a bonding process, and you have to help, you gotta reiterate to explain that. He's the legal wording on it. But, and I said, because we're not gonna vote on anything with it. And they said, well, that's fine. You aren't a part of it,
So just for clarification, is that they paid back the bonds in lieu of property taxes?
No, that property, so the company will still pay commercial. So if you own a farm and you've ever paid taxes, you know the benefit of owning a farm, correct? Okay, it's not very expensive taxes you pay on a farmland. When that farmland now becomes commercial, like use, it will be taxed just like my building is taxed, any building is taxed, or any commercial businesses is taxed. And it will be a much higher rate than assessment. Basically, everyone's rates are the same. I heard somebody say, what's the rate? Your property taxes are the same for everybody. It's just what your value of your land is assessed at is where it becomes the cost. And when that land becomes commercially assessed, the value is increased substantially. And the county government would receive the commercial tax on that. So that's what we would, I guess, it's definitely gonna be taxed, I can tell you that.
So how do the revenue bonds work then exactly? Aren't they paid in lieu of taxes of some sort?
That's not to the county though. The county has nothing to do with that. Nothing at all with those bonds. No.
And there's also, I think there's confusion too. The bonds are used twice in the statute. So you've got IRB is not mentioned in the statute, but it's one way to do it. And as Judge said, the county doesn't have to do it. And it sounds like they're not going to do it. And the other bond that is in the statute is the decommissioning bond. What that is when they go to the Public Service Commission and they present their plan and what they want to do and all that, they're required to show that they are getting a decommissioning bond, which is basically money that will be there if, when the time comes to finally decommission, where they're at the end of the lease life, or if they don't renew the lease or whatever, and they go, I think it's like in the statute, 12 months without providing energy or whenever they're ready to take it all down. Let's say they go under or something happens, there's something there to be drawn to make sure that the price of whatever it's going to take to clean it all up, pick it all up, whatever is there. And that's part of the whole process. And they have to present that to the Public Service Commission. I think they already, in the filings, they mentioned what the plan would be. But, you know, when they finally go to the Public Service Commission to get approval, they have to show they've got all that lined up and it's ready to go. It does mention about the county can be named as a secondary beneficiary. It doesn't have to happen, but they have to at least offer that. So that way, if they do go under and nobody's around to fix it, there's something there to fix it.
So meaning beneficiary would mean the money would come back to the county in regards to if we had to deal with any of the situation of cleanup. Basically, is that what you're understanding? Yes. So we would, like, I know people hear bond and they think that it's like a government, like we're bonding this project for these, and we're not. There's nothing to do with the county government, any of this. And the PSC is over making sure that they are following through with their decommission plan in regards to keeping that bond up, correct? Yes. Not me.
Okay.
Again, that's up to the PSC is responsible to keep up with all of that.
And that's what the bond's there for. If they go belly up, I know that because that's obviously a concern. I mean, companies failed. And that was one of the things they put in the statute to try to be a safeguard. Now, I know people are thinking, and I don't blame you, it's government. You know, do you trust them to follow through? But that's just the law. That's what the legislature came up with as a safeguard in place to address, because that's the other thing too. In other states you've had, and again, I'm not speaking for this, so don't mistake, I'm just trying to say what the law is. In other states, they've had issues that come up with solar farms and they fail, and environmental problems and all that. So when I read it, it seemed to me that the Kentucky legislature, at the very least, again, we can all debate about whether the statute's good or not, you know, but they at least try to think to address a lot of concerns, like they have to have a report on the effect of environmental conditions, or the effect of wildlife. Is there going to be a glare to planes flying over, or to neighbors or people driving by? They have to do a study on what the noise would be. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into this entire process when the public, and again, it's subject to, you know, it can be subject to a hearing too. But they'll take all this stuff together, and they also appoint people to this commission to be able to look at all that. And again, go by the factors the legislature set to examine it and see, have they done what they're supposed to under the statute to open up and start constructing this facility.
Anyone else that hadn't signed in? Did we miss anybody? Okay, you come on up. State your name, please, when you come up.
My name is Jimmy Stevens, and in case you didn't hear, mine's telephone that went off twice. And I apologize for that. Is the solar farms a done deal?
The wood duck line in regards to in the process, yes. They're not done deal in regards to their approvals in Frankfurt and the PSC part, they're in that part, but that's in motion.
May I ask this question? Would a letter from you distinguished people to the Public Service Commission expressing your disapproval of the wood duck situation have any effect upon, and before you answer me, I'll say something else. There are approximately 12 landowners involved with the solar farm. The latest I heard, there was about 73 landowners who will be either completely surrounded It will be in front of them, behind them, beside of them, or across the road. So what I would ask our magistrates to do, especially Mr. Kinslow, and I'm gonna say Mr. Stinson, it makes me feel strict. I'm gonna ask each one of the magistrates, Jeff, you too, I'll call you Jeff, and Tim, talk to the people of your districts. See what they think about this. I have talked to several people. And out of those people that I have talked to, there have only been 2 people who have said they would not sign a petition, which I put in front of them opposing the solar panel. Talk to your district. Ronnie, if you talk to the people between Dripping Springs Road and Park City, you'll be surprised at the number of people that are opposed to it. And so I think you're really going to be surprised at the number of people that are opposed to it. And I'm going to ask you to do this. After you have talked to them, I'm going to ask Jamie and each of you I'm going to ask Jamie to write a letter. And then I'm going to ask the managers to sign it. Send it to the Public Service Commission, requesting that they say no to the project back.
Anyone?
I just have a quick question on that. Could the people that have their properties surrounded also write to this commission?
Yes, and we have been.
Okay, good.
Yeah, again, I mean, I met with them that day and I've expressed to them concern, from the public. And, it just, like I said, it's as long as they're checking off their boxes. I mean, again, it gets into the legal parts. That's what it is. Since you already went, Jody.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, magistrates. Been a little while since I've been up here. Kind of the same deal.
Welcome.
I'm gonna tell everybody, I appreciate you guys for announcing this meeting and the other meetings to come. It means a lot.
And we did put it in the paper. I was also gonna say we didn't put it in the paper, but it was in the paper.
I seen it and it's been all over the news. And for the ones that wasn't involved a few years back, I gotta be careful what I say. I don't want to get put in freaking court. But this would not have happened. Okay. So this is a good deal. We all got a right to speak our views, okay? Mine's pretty strong sometimes, and that's just how it is. We have ordinances in the county, they're road, I promise you. I've read about every one of them. Some of them I can remember, some I can't. Ordinances are on the books to protect the citizens of this county. That being said, I went up against the International Property Maintenance Code years ago, and I know it was brought up over here. Okay, that thing sounds awesome. It sounds like the best German chocolate cake you've ever eaten in your life. Until you get to reading it and you dig in it. You dig in it, your house color. So if your neighbor doesn't like it, guess what? They can write a letter and guess what? You gotta paint it. And it's at your expense. Your grass has to be mowed a certain height. Okay, you gotta have screens on your windows. Your hearth has to be a certain size. Handrails have to be on all porches, steps, egress, access, everything. I can keep going on this. We don't need that. We need our own. Okay, and I thank you so much for saying we're not Warren County, because that has been beating our heads for a lot of years. We are not Warren County. We're Barron County. We need to be proud of who we are. We are Barron. Period. 100%. I'm back it all the time. Okay, I'm gonna fight till I ain't got no breath left in my lungs against anything that tells somebody else how to live in this country. I promise you, I've done it and I'll do it again. Okay, and that's every one of y'all. I don't have to know you. I don't have to love you. I don't have to like you, but I will fight for you. I guarantee you. Okay, and every one of y'all seem to have the same spirit. I love it. Like it's awesome that I didn't have to go out and dig up a bunch of people to come up here and state what they thought. Instead of somebody saying, hey, can you go talk for me? No, you got your own 2 feet and you get here. Okay, get somebody to drive you, whatever. So anyway. One of my biggest fears is on this solar is Bend property getting condemned. If it was to go under say like, and they had to use the bond to clean it up. That property's condemned. Okay, if anybody's been around, construction sites got a lot of concrete in the ground and it's abandoned, guess what? It's condemned until it's cleaned up.
Yeah.
Most people can't afford that. Okay, I realize the property owner signed into it. Ultimately, they are responsible. I get this. But that being said, that is going to be an expense that they're going to have to sell at a very cost to them. Okay, I get the fact that a landowner doesn't want this next to them. All right, I've dealt with a little bit of stuff on my own property lately that where I had somebody that didn't like what I was doing on my property. Well, guess what? I like my kids riding fours over playing on video games. Okay, so that's just how it is. That's my property. We all have the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
Yes.
Okay, that is this country. That's what we're built on. Okay. But we all gotta have respect for one another.
Yes.
And that's where I come in on this is, I know I'm past 2 minutes, I'm sorry. There has to be a level of respect between me and this man here, him and me and you, him, her, whatever.
Yeah.
These companies need to respect you too.
Yes, yes.
Okay, it ain't about the big man. In the end, it's about us.
Yes, yes.
So I'm 100% against zoning, but I do believe there is a way to make things happen. And I'm willing, just like last time, I'll stand here in front of everybody and I'll tell you, I'm willing to be on whatever committee or whatever to see if we can make it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the close, well, we do really well. But I would in closing like to give each of the magistrates a few seconds or whatever, couple minutes or something you'd like to say anything. So we'll start with Jeff Butts.
I'm still just listening right now. I will say, I shared with some of the masters, we had a conference last week. I took a dog a couple weeks ago to get trained in Kansas City. I stayed with a cousin in St. Louis, and on the traveling from St. Louis to Kansas City, Highway 70 going west, I was just driving along, seeing the farm here, seeing the factory here, and all of a sudden out of the blue, a solar farm. I didn't think it looked bad. I'm not saying this to tell you what side I'm on. I'm just telling you, I was driving down, I seen the solar farm. It was neat. It looked neat. 2 miles down the road, I seen another factory look good. 3 or 4 more miles down the road, I seen a cedar thicket. Probably somebody had a pheasant or something farm or a wildlife growed up. It didn't look good, but it was their land. 6 or 7 more miles down the road, I seen a junkyard, and probably 150 feet in the air was crushed cars. I'll be glad to get a camera because I'll be going there periodically in the next few months just to shoot a picture of that solar farm, and in some of these other pictures that, you know, people do whatever they want to do, and some of them naturally look better and look worse. But the solar farm, I haven't, other than in the paper, seen them, but that on 70 looked really good. So that was just my opinion right now on it, is that looked good. And I don't know what they're looking like in Barron County. Sorry.
Next, Mr. Pettigo.
I have nothing to say right now.
All right.
I'll be smart.
Mr. Durham.
Well, I'm in Durham. That don't work usually for me. But well, first of all, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out. This is a big deal, and I appreciate each and one of you coming out. I'm learning. I am. I don't own a farm. I've got 3 acres. I don't think nobody's wanting it. But I don't own the farm, and I don't, but I do respect all farmers in this county more than you'll ever know. And I respect all of your views. But that's what we're here for too, is to learn. And this is helping. It's helping each and every one of us. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank the judge for doing this for Barron County. Kevin's been beat up. And Kevin's doing a great job, and I appreciate him very much too. So maybe we can all work this out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Mr. Greenberg.
Anybody that knows me in here knows that there's nobody that
farming means more to than me. Nobody that enjoys driving down, seeing a country road and seeing the farmland and saying that. I'll say right now, I am for zoning in our county. And the reason why is right now, we have no say. I'd like to know if there's anyone that was against it in here that spoke tonight. Has a dollar store being built in their front yard or solar panels being built in their yard that's, you know, that's against it. I think we would all think different if it was happening to us. I think we gotta get, I'm talking right now, if you don't mind. I think you've had your time. I think everyone needs to be able to do with their land what they want to do to a certain extent, but when it starts taking value from other people's land, I think we need to have some setbacks. We can't stop, like even with zoning, we can't stop any of this. And I'm not for more government regulations, and my fears, like everyone else, we give them an inch, they take a mile. And that's the way it's always been in government. You know, it seems like, but we've got to start somewhere in controlling some of this. And now, I'm sorry if you want to ask me a question.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I would like you to research something a little bit more, like, or talk with my husband. Maybe you can take him out to lunch and he'll tell you more about, because he like lives in the land zoning out in Oregon. And he's licensed in California
Well, this is
and in
not
Texas.
I don't really care what's.
Well, because I don't think you understand, like, there's a company, there's a business called the Many Friends of Oregon, right? We got zoning in our county. And then the Many Friends of Oregon, who is no friend to Oregonians, came in and started saying, you can't have a pond. You're taking water, you're stealing water from the state. So forget having a pond. You have no idea how invasive it gets. And I would beg you.
This is not Oregon, this is not Warren County. We're gonna draw up our own rules.
It's
and we're
not,
gonna
it
be
does not
very.
work that way. I lived it.
Okay, next
I
up.
would like to remember something he said. You do have people sitting here that are against the solar that are not for zoning.
I'm sorry.
You have several people sitting here that are against the solar that are not for zoning.
Yeah, right.
Okay, next, Mr. Kinsler.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Glad all of you came out. This is what it's all about. Everybody needs a voice. Anybody that knows me very well, I know a lot of people in here. I've even got a couple of my ex co-workers that are in here. I never have any trouble voicing my opinion. You can ask any of the magistrates up here. A lot of people wish that I didn't talk so much, but I'm going to give you my view on this. It's a little different than anything else that's been said. I believe that the solar in its health is getting a bad rap. And this is what I mean by that. I've lived on the same farm every day of my life. It was my grandfather's. It was my dad's. It belonged to me and my brothers. And as of today, I don't own an acre. I've already passed it on to my children. I want it to be theirs, but I'm still, even though I'm not a landowner, I'm gonna talk like one. And this is what I mean, I believe this solar is getting a bad rap. Most of my life, I don't like driving down the road and I see a farm right down the road that when I was a boy, me and my dad and my brothers used to bale hay there. We used to cut tobacco there. We used to combine wheat. And me and my brothers and my dad worked all over my area, all the way to Mary Oaks, Brilt, and over Fort Park City, down Beaver Creek Boat Ramp Road, Dripping Springs Road. But anyhow, what I'm getting at, I already don't like seeing land that I used to work on, not a farm anymore. And what I mean, the solar itself is getting a bad rap. I don't look at a solar farm any different than a mobile home area. I don't look at it any different than a housing development. There's a housing development on the road I live on land that used to be farmland that I worked for my neighbors. My brothers and I owned a farm at Bon Air, right across the road. And I can even tell you their names. It was Bill and Elizabeth Smith owned it. I can still close my eyes and see them out there baling hay, cutting tobacco, man and woman. That land now is a mobile home area. So I don't distinguish against this solar than I do. It's all the same. I don't like seeing the land go. When my brothers and I sold the land that we had at Bon Air, we could have made a lot of money if we could put it in a subdivision, but we didn't. We sold it to another farmer that we knew that reasonably, as long as we were alive and he was alive, that it would still be a farm. And so now you know my view on, and I guess the last thing that I want to say I haven't said, I am against anybody telling me what I could have done with my own land. And I sure don't want to tell my neighbor or anybody else what they can do with their land. If I don't what's going on next door to me, I've got the opportunity to buy the land if I want to. I've got 6 Amish houses that I can see from my yard now. Didn't used to be that way. Now I'm not saying anything bad against the Amish. They're friends of mine. I do favors for them. They do favors for me. But if I didn't want them next to me, I could have bought the land. But there could be a junkyard next door. There could be a subdivision next door. That's the way the world works, folks. You do what you want to do with your own land.
Well, Marty, your time's up.
I told you I have no trouble.
I did give Marty an extra minute or two because he literally almost died a year ago. Is it yesterday?
Yes.
Yesterday. So we're glad to have you here with us.
A year ago yesterday, I very nearly lost my life, and I'm still recovering today.
So I gave you that extra minute.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Next up, Mr. Stinson.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Kevin and the judge both for being here, and Monty too for answering questions from all this. The best thing about this is everybody got to come together, and the ones that are affected by this got to tell their side of the story and let everybody else know how they feel and how it's affecting them. Now, I like owning my land. Worked hard for it as a lumberjack for 42 years, but I killed myself getting it. So I have little concerns over that. But again, we need to know how everybody feels and what we can do to best help our county, whichever way that is, and the most people in this county. And two of my favorite, well, I got several favorite people here, I'm sorry, but Jimmy and Ann here are like my family. And yes, Jimmy, that was the topic of conversation this morning at Miss Betty's restaurant. The whole table was full and I said, all right, let me hear your all's opinion on this. So, but again, I wouldn't want this in my front yard. I'm not sure that I could stop it either, but you know, it's just part of it. But I appreciate y'all being here and I appreciate getting to hear your side of the story. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Gross.
Likewise, I want to thank everybody for being here, because we need to know everybody's opinions. Several of us were at a conference last week. And it's not just us. I mean, the majority of the 120 counties in this state are talking about this, okay? It's not just Barron County. And I'll go back on what somebody said about Warren County. There's no part of me wants to be Warren County. I told many people, you want to be like Warren County? Move to Warren County. And it's like anything else government gets into. I see pros and I see cons to it, okay? I mean, I try to be open-minded. I try to stay down the middle of the road and see both sides. I'm gonna be honest with you. I agree with what they said here. I wouldn't want solar panels right beside me. I also don't want to see this subdivision that's getting ready to go in front of me and my brother's farm, but I can't stop it because we couldn't afford the $1.4 million to buy the farm. So I can't stop it. But I'm not against the guy doing it because I'm not gonna fault him for making money, okay? I'm just saying, I don't want to see that either. So I see, like I said, pros and cons to it. I don't think anybody on this court is advocating planning and zoning. I think we're all open-minded. We just want to hear everybody. And again, I appreciate everybody being here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Can I say something for you?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, you're late. You didn't sign in. Go ahead, step up. Mr. Carver.
I hesitated about coming up here, but my name's Billy Carver. It seems like I'm against zoning. I don't want anybody telling me what to do with my land either. But at the same thing, we don't want our neighbors to do we don't want solar panels in their yard, so we don't want to tell nobody what we can do, but we won't tell somebody else what they can do. I guess my thing of it is, like Kevin, it's a magical world I'm living in, I guess, but planned development, I think if we got away from zoning and just said planned development, Glasgow, Joe Austin, he gave me my history lesson on this, but Glasgow was developed around a big spring right for Apple Square. It was developed around that spring because of the water source it had. It became contaminated because everybody went to it. There wasn't nobody, they just overused it. So I guess that goes back years ago, but in today's thing, or a thought for today would be if we didn't have planned development or some type of regulations, I wouldn't want to go into Colton's tonight and have a slaughterhouse right next door to it. That's a little bit, it's kind of the same thing. I had to call Jamie, but there's a dollar store being built right in front of my yard, right in front of my house. I built it 2 years ago and the dollar store coming there. If I'd known the dollar store was coming, I probably wouldn't have built the house there. Maybe not. I don't know. I couldn't have. The guy sold the land. He got more than I would be willing to pay for it to prevent it from coming. So I'm not really telling him what he can do with it. I'm not trying to stop him from it. I'm looking at it as a positive that I'll be able to go get a gallon of milk and lunch bread. There is positives to it, but planned development, if we could look at this as planned development, not zoning. Look at it as we want to build Barron County to be the best it can be for our grandkids. And to have structure in the way that it's done requires some type of restrictions in it. I don't know what the answer is, but I don't want, you don't want to, like I said, you don't want a slaughterhouse or a chicken killing facility right next to McDonald's, or we've kind of planned and developed ourselves over the years because factories have went to where water and sewer was available. David Bailey developed every industrial park here was kind of founded he had an influence on that. And it came from where the water and sewer was already there, the infrastructure was there. So he took the land and developed it for the infrastructure. And I think if we get out of the mindset, somebody gives us a free piece of property, well, we use it, we're gonna go use it for a ball field or something. And it might be right where an industrial site should have been, but we built a ball field out there. Or, you know, plan development, if we can get away from looking at the best use for a property and developing it that way. I'm not trying to say a farmer can't plant corn or soybeans or do what he wants with his land, but in the future, look, we just need to build ourselves up to where we're gonna be positive. And I'm not trying to be Warren County either, but I don't wanna be regressive. I don't wanna move backwards either. So that's.
And we are trying to do that in some regards, and you know, like the big investors coming in and just trying to at least guide them into certain areas and developments within the cities. It's just the problem we run into with the county is these people pop up out of nowhere, you know, and that's what we run into.
And it's done a good job. I'm not commending or condemning anybody, but I just, if there was a magical wand that we had that could say, we're gonna have planned development and not zoning, or we're gonna try to develop this piece of property for its best use versus whatever's the free cheapest way at the time. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else before we close this one out?
15 seconds, won't keep you.
15 seconds.
I was the second person to speak tonight, and I've been kind of pointed at as the guy who's for zoning by a few people.
It's okay.
And after listening to all of the arguments, and if zoning would not have prevented something like the Blue Oval SK plant coming into Glendale or some other large corporate entity coming in, changing the landscape drastically, then I'm not for zoning.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, thank you all so much for coming. And like I said, this was just an info session for us to, because again, all these things are coming through and all these issues we're dealing with. And, you know, the first topic is coming up. It's, you know, if you want these to happen, you know, how can we fix the situation? So we're just listening, and I do appreciate everyone that came this evening. If you ever need anything in this office, just reach out. Thank you all.